Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils. 8 teams came into the Big 12. I remember the day that Texas and Oklahoma left and talking about, okay, well, Baylor could go to the Pac-12. Maybe Oklahoma State goes to the SEC. In the end, we keep everybody together. We grab 4 very solid programs from the Pac-12. We grab 4 from different conferences in the independent ranks. BYU fans would tell you they're number 1. Utah fans would say, hey, we've won 2 Pac-12 championships. We're the best edition. UCF has the recruiting base in Florida, and Colorado has Deion Sanders, and Cincinnati or Houston, or as we talk about these new teams that have been added to the Big 12, Arizona would tell you they're better than Arizona State. Is Arizona State number 1 the best new Big 12 team out of these 8?
Yes. I mean, with how quickly they have established themselves, but like I mentioned earlier, like, you can look at the recent lack of success that ASU has had, and like, that's putting it politely. They've been terrible. Yeah. But you look at the history that this program has had, and even the last 10 years, they've been far more successful than they have not been successful. This was always a really good ad for the Big 12, but the recency of what they've done really made it look like it was a bad addition. But ASU historically is a very good football program. And we knew we were going to be back in this sooner rather than later. We had an idea of probably year 3, year 4 of Kenny Dillingham. We were going to be back on the map. We're back way sooner than that. And they made some big-time statement wins this year by beating K-State, by beating BYU, by beating, who was it? Iowa State.
The Utah win.
Yeah, the Utah win. Like, they had good wins this year. And some of them were bigger than anyone was going to realize. That BYU game is always hilarious to me. Like, we played a great second half. They couldn't beat us. Played a good first half, like, kind of counters each other. They weren't going to win that game. We were just the better team that day. If it's in Provo, I don't know. Maybe it's different. But we were the better team that day and won the game. And we won games all year long. And we just have shown that we are already in that top tier of the Big 12. And at worst, going into next year, you'll be like top 3. But Drake, they're returning probably 80% of that roster, probably even a little bit more. You have had starters and backups that have publicly said on Twitter, yeah, we're running it back next year. Guys who could go pro, nope, we're running it back. This is a team that's built to last. The recruiting is getting better and better. They attack the transfer portal as well as anybody in the country. They're on the rise. The NIL's getting crazy. Yeah, ASU, it was always going to be a great addition. It just so happened it was year 1 instead of year 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's absurd to me that this time last year you could not have come close to arguing for ASU. Reason being, from the Herm Edwards disaster to everything off the field with that, and Kenny Dillingham going 3-9, and you're just staring down the barrel of what could have been a 4-8 Big 12 team this year, and people outside of the program wouldn't have been that surprised. And then UCF would have said, oh, we have recruiting. And Arizona was supposed to be a top 5 Big 12 team, and BYU had a top 10 ranking just a couple of years ago, and Utah had 2 Pac-12 championships. I think you probably would have made a strong case for Utah, but they missed a bowl game this year. Arizona State's going to the college football playoff, the first out of the 8. And while I'm supposed to play Devils, not Sun Devils advocate, but Devils advocate here for the entirety of the conference, it's tough to argue against Kenny Dillingham and company because of what they did this year. And that question, it now evolves into longevity. What are the odds that this is an annual deal for Arizona State, that they're competing for a Big 12 title? They're in the conversation for the 12 because, Richie, we just saw TCU win a college football playoff game. And since then, it's been, okay, just pretty bad. And this year they were okay, met expectations. We don't know how they'll be next year. Can Arizona State have the kind of success long-term that is expected from a BYU fan base or Deion Sanders at Colorado?
Yep, and it's starting off with next year by itself.
Okay.
You're returning the vast majority of that team. You're going to return Levitt and Tyson, majority of your offensive line, your tight end room. Almost the entire defense will be returning to that team as long as they have the eligibility. The coaching staff is going to stay in place. They extended both of their coordinators. Kenny Dillingham's not going anywhere.
Yep.
This team is going to be basically identical to last year's team, and it's going to give them a huge opportunity to run the table once again. No matter how this season ends, it would be inexcusable for the AP poll, coaches poll, whatever, to not have ASU in the top 15 preseason going into next year with everything that is returning and some of the additions they've already made, like Kanye Udo from Army, that running back who's going to replace Cam Scadaboo. Dude, it is a great team. So even if it's just for one more year, and I promise it won't be, but ASU is going to have a repeat successful season next year, and they're just going to continue to get better because the recruiting is getting better and better. They already have a 4-star kid in their 2026 class at quarterback who has a chance to get up to 5 stars because he still has a whole other year, and he's already a really high 4-star kid. Like, it's just a program that is growing at a pace that nobody expect. I didn't expect it. I thought this was going to be a slow but steady progression for the team. I said 7-5 was the record at the start of the year. I thought I was hopelessly optimistic.
Yeah,
they're just so far ahead of the curve, and it's only going to continue to get better for ASU, especially with Dillingham staying. He's not going anywhere despite all the speculation of, well, what if someone pays him more? Well, ASU's NIL is catching up. They're going to be able to pay him just as much, and it's his dream job. And you believe him when he says that too. Like, yeah, ASU's here to stay, Drake.
You know, Richie, I have been courted by some Arizona State athletes who I'm well-traveled now. I've been to Casamigos. I've been to Scottsdale. I've seen it. It's not too far from Tempe, and there is a very good recruiting pitch to be had in Scottsdale and Tempe and that entire area. I mean, it's not a bad spot to be if you're a college kid or a college athlete especially. So I know that the Sun Devils can recruit out of the portal as well. And it begs the question, from Tempe to Provo to Salt Lake City to Orlando, there are some destinations here where people are taking vacations to Scottsdale. They're taking vacations to Salt Lake City to climb the mountains, the Wasatch. They're going to Orlando to Disney World. And maybe that's not the case for Cincinnati, but they've been to a college football playoff. Maybe that's not the case for a Houston, who you're going to see the Astros, the Texans, maybe not the Cougars, but you have that kind of a metro there. And that goes for Colorado. It goes for all of these 8. Are we in a realm right now where the new 8 are kind of overtaking the spotlight from the original 8 Big 12 teams?
We're going to have to see, because there's a lot of perks that those schools that you brought up have. You've got the reputation of, like, Oklahoma State. This is a weird year for them. Yeah, this is not the norm. They'll be able to bounce back. And if they don't, then, I mean, you're talking about a complete catastrophe at that program. But TCU still has a name brand. Baylor has a name brand. Yeah, there are programs that are still going to be able to. K-State has a name brand. They'll be able to keep pace. But, I mean, if you talk about pure potential, if Deion stays at Colorado, they're only going to continue to skyrocket. ASU, they're only going to continue to grow. UCF has tons to offer. BYU and Utah are in great positions right now to continue winning football games in beautiful areas of the country. And there's a lot to offer that all these schools have on the table. And Cincinnati, like you said, I don't know too much of what's going on out there, but they're only a few years removed from being the first team that wasn't a Power 5 conference to go to the college football playoff. They have a proven track record of success. There's a lot that these new Big 12 schools offer that, I don't know, maybe in 5 years, we're talking about the conference flipped on its head. And you have those teams ahead of the stalwarts that have been in the Big 12 for decades. Crazy Richie, to think.
That it's something that, every team in the Big 12 for me has to be represented equally by Locked On Big 12. It's tough to do. Look, in a 5-7 year, I can't do near as many shows about Kansas as I do Arizona State, obviously. But I root for the success of all 16, and seeing the progress of the 8 already is kind of wild. Even seeing a Utah who created its brand, who made itself known, and then went 5-7, but it's still known. That's not a bad thing for this conference on the whole. Richie, where can listeners of Locked On Big 12 find more of your work?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at RichieBrads36. That's with a Z for Brads, RichieBrads36. The podcast is on Twitter at LO_Sun Devils. Podcast is wherever you get your shows. YouTube is Locked On Sun Devils. I interact with just about everyone I can. Recently, Texas fans have been blowing me up, so do me a favor. Get in those comments and help defend your boy, because I'm fighting for my life right now.
I love it, Richie. Well, thanks so much for joining Locked On Big 12 for a crossover today. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Sun Devils, Endose Grande.